because I'd accumulated so much cash and my business was purring. And then I lost all my motivation. Everything disappeared. And I realized that this wasn't alignment. This was just something that was convenient, that was driving me forward. And now I hated it and I burnt out.
Welcome to the Awaken Man podcast. Today we have the joy of being joined by Dr. Emil. How you doing, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
And I'm sat in front of two screens, and I'm doing actually a comparison. Who's got the better hair?
Come on, mate.
Is it? Sorry, Pete. Yeah, it's. Is it Emil?
You know I've got the best hair in the game.
Pete is sharpening up. He's looking good, man. You know, like his background's improved. He's got a plant in the back. He's obviously had a trim. Yeah, it's going well for him. But we haven't come on just to admire great men. Honestly, Emil, thanks for coming on to the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. And just before you introduce yourself a little bit more, I just looking at the stuff that you put out there, it's very rare. Very rare. Like I was in the training world for a long time that you see someone with the almost like the credentials that you've got. Not only have you got like practical experience in all the different sports and the different disciplines that you've undertaken, but you've got trainer knowledge, like strength and conditioning knowledge, and you've got medical knowledge. Like that's quite an impressive resume, if I may say so myself.
Yeah, thank you. It was less by design and more by catapulting through life and trying to experience everything fully, iterating as I went. But yeah, here I am with my past and my history, and I, don't regret any of it. And it's made me who I am today with the various quirks and whatever else. So yeah, we can dig into that at some point for sure.
Yeah, and really what we wanted to cover today is just some of the things that you've discovered on your journey, but and also like you love winning, and we wanted to talk about masculinity, and if we were to look at masculinity as a game, how would you play it to win? So we're going to be covering all sorts of angles today. If you're a guy who likes talking anything to do with career, gym, fitness, health, deep levels of health, and being an incredible man, just listen in, guys, because it's going to be a great podcast. So let's dive in. Pete, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, mate. Well, I want to. I met Dr. Emil this year, right? We were introduced into each other's worlds, and I'm like, here's a man. Here's a man I like to see because he, like you said, he's in fucking great condition. He's got great credentials. Obviously, it just from an outside perspective, just looking in, just great values. And I like that. So, my man, tell us a little bit about like your story here because you've got like doctor credentials here. We'd like to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I put Dr. Emil in my little thing, but just Emil is fine, honestly. So yeah, I'm a first generation immigrant. I was born in Serbia, came to the UK when I was 2, grew up in the UK. And what that meant was my family was very much go to university, get a job, a good job, status, all that kind of thing, right? And so I fell into medicine. My dad's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor, my cousin's a doctor. You should be a doctor. And I'm like, okay, sure, it's an easy life, a status, I'm good at passing exams, let's do it. So I went to medical school. During medical school, I also did a sports science degree. So I've always been involved in sport from a young age, and I can thank my parents for that as well, honestly. So yeah, after 6 years in university, I graduated, started working as a doctor, did that for 4 years full time. And then at one point, I kind of decided that this wasn't everything that I wanted it to be. And so I was like, maybe there's more out there. So 2015, I left full-time medical training. I started on Instagram, basically flexing my coaching and fitness credentials. Started as an online coach, doing the whole bodybuilding Instagram influencer thing. And then from there, over the next 4 years, I built a coaching business. I was still working part-time as a doctor. And then eventually 2019, the business kicked off. I finished with medicine. I left the UK, moved to Portugal, went to Asia for the winter. Then COVID happened, and that kind of sealed the deal for my, UK/medical career. I never went back. And then, yeah, I did coaching for a number of years. had a few more breakthroughs and realizations. And one thing that we kind of keep touching on is this concept of winning at life. And I just kept asking myself this question: what is winning at life? And, you know, as a doctor with a house, a car, and all of that, I was winning at life by societal standards. And then as a Instagram influencer, bodybuilder, six-pack photo shoots, I was winning at life. And then as a digital nomad, Tim Ferriss style, Thailand, Bali, all the, you know, shots, beaches, I was winning at life, but it never felt that way. And then so in the last 18 months, I've kind of moved on to another level. Who knows how many there are? And that's my current adventure. But yeah, that's a very high level overview, and we can fill in the gaps if anything is of interest.
Yeah, I'm sure like a lot of guys can relate to like having certain status of credentials of status and but just feeling like, is this it? Is this what it's meant to be? Like, I've got the car now, right? I've got the model wife. I've climbed the corporate ladder, or I'm doing pretty well in business. Like, is this it? Yeah, I think a lot of guys can resonate with that.
There's a quote by, I think, David Foster Wallace, and he says along the lines of, we're lucky if we see success early to notice that it's not everything in life, so that early we can start to find what is actually important to us. And I found that powerful, because I hit every goal I ever set out to achieve, and I hit it rapidly. And after a while, you're like, I mean, this isn't doing it. This isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I just kept hitting goals. And at some point I realized it's not about the goals. There's something more out there. So yeah, it's an ongoing journey.
Well, I actually want to slow you down to that was a pretty big ballsy move to go through a freaking medical degree, get the money that you invested in all of that, and then pivot. You know, like there's no doubt guys listening to this podcast who have been in that similar situation where, you know, familial conditioning is you go and get a certain type of degree, or you go into a certain field, and they've got this calling to go and do something different. And that you actually did that. Like you said it pretty quickly, but I can imagine that was not difficult. Like, you know, just even your smile there is like, can you tell me more about that? Because I think that's such an important move. Like, you know, Pete described him recently, a power move to really go after what you want.
Yeah, for sure. So I was always, you know, as you say, familial parental conditioning, societal conditioning, honestly. I was just on the path, and, you know, I checked all the boxes, I passed the exams, and, you know, there was always just over the next hill, just over the next hill. And I graduated, and then I had 2 years of kind of junior doctor training where you get thrown around different specialties. And I was like, just over the next hill. And then I started practicing as an anesthetist, which is what I chose. And I was like, I mean, this is all right. But I was kind of like now peering over the next hill and was like, I don't know that this is actually what I want. And I was kind of sitting with bosses in the operating room and looking at them kind of complaining about life and, you know, not particularly happy. And I was like, is this what I'm shooting for? Is this honestly it? Because this isn't easy. You know, it's long days, hour commute there, hour commute back. I'm trying to live my life. This is hard. And if this is the end goal, I mean, I don't know that I want this. And I mean, it seems like a big move. And honestly, it is a big move. Very few people leave medicine. However, it was a series of small moves that culminated. I mean, after 4 years full-time medicine, it took me another 4 years before I did my last shift in the emergency room. And so the first time I left after basic anesthetic training, and I was still working in the emergency room as a locum. And I was building my business. And honestly, I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. I had zero idea about business. And thankfully, I was still working as a doctor to start and kind of build up some money. And it took me a long time, but each time I could have gone back. So I kind of had this safety net. I kind of had this freedom and you know, privilege to be able to continue to explore and learn and figure this stuff out until I gained enough traction in 2018, 19 for then my business to take off. And even then it took me another 2-3 years before I became confident in myself and my abilities in business to be like, okay, I'm never going to go back to being a doctor because I was terrified that I would fail. So yeah, it was a series of small decisions that culminated in this, like, overnight success kind of story. But yeah, it was a big move, honestly.
Yeah. Do you have a question there, Pete?
Yeah, just on the like terrified that you were going to fail, because I like that's so many guys don't make the power moves and don't or not even the power moves, just don't make a move on certain fears. Was there something for you that was like a straw that broke the camel's back, or just like a moment where it was like, you know what, fuck this, like this, I'm out, like done, or was it just like slow and steady? Was there something? Was there a catalyst?
Yeah, there was a number of things, honestly. So I remember an example when I was in the operating room and I was sitting with one of the seniors, one of the bosses, and she was at the pinnacle of what you could achieve in the NHS in the UK, doing private work, earning as much as you could as a doctor in the UK, and still she was complaining about life. And still we were getting buffeted around by the system, being told what to do. There wasn't much agency. And just in that moment, I just remember it vividly. I was like, I don't think this is it. And then I also had a natural break in my training. So after 2 years as an anesthetist, you reapply to the next level. And I thought, if I'm going to take a break, now is the time to take it. And also because my family were very safety conscious, very worried, very fixed in the system, this is how I sold it to them as well. I was like, look, I'm going to take a year out. This is common enough. I'm going to work as a doctor. I can come back easily. And then it became another year, and it's okay, I'm making enough money, there's no problem, blah, blah, blah. And then it became another year, and then it became another year. And I always knew that I never wanted to go back, but I was telling myself that was, the possibility. And so I'm very much not one for burning my bridges. I'm very much one for careful contingency planning, risk mitigation and management, and then winning eventually. So yeah, that's yeah. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, because that's interesting that you say that, right? Because there's two sides to this. It's either what you've done there. It's like, hey, I can just be real contingent, nice, slow, steady plan. I have got a backup plan to fall on. Like I have got a bit of money in the bank. I have got a something to fall back on, right? Or there is do you know what? Plan A, no plan B. I'm going to play full out. I'm fucking backing myself. Like Ben said this a few months ago, and I'm pretty sure it was you, Ben, that said this, because this was a fantastic question. You said this. You said it to all the guys in one of our groups. It's like, when has there ever been a time where you've played full out and you failed? And I'm like, that's a fucking strong question. Because when I really think about the times where I've played like full out, 100% all in, like I can't play, I haven't. I have succeeded. So for the guys like listening, and maybe there is some power moves. So there's choices to make. Whether you put the contingency in place and you take it slow, because that does work. But so does the other route of just going, I'm going to go all fucking in and I'm going to play full out and do the power move.
The question that comes up for me, actually, just from what we talked about before, Emil, is that you seem to have been the guy that has taken these decisions. You've made these, and it's always worked out for you. And I'm curious as to why things have worked out for you. What do you, if you would say, are you allowed to blow your own trumpet as loud as you want? What do you do in your life that makes it that you succeed at these different arenas that you go into? Because it's like there's many, and I don't know if you're cognizant of it or if you're not, but I imagine you are. What is it that really does help you, create this success after success?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, and I think about this a lot, because if I can kind of reverse engineer it, whatever I've done, I can continue to exhibit it and continue to live it. And honestly, it requires massive action. It requires a lot of action. And then there's a Hormozy quote which says, sometimes your best isn't good enough and you just need to be better. Right. And I love that. And it's about continuing to apply yourself until you win. It's a growth mindset, believing that anything is learnable, anything is doable. You just need to persevere. It's about doing things for the right reasons and not for external validation or out of insecurity or fear, because then that allows you to keep doing it long enough to win. And you know what? As I've grown older, what I've also realized is it's not even about achieving the things. It's about the journey to achieving the things. And this is cheesy as hell, but honestly, I've achieved enough things for multiple people and multiple lifetimes. And it changes nothing. Like, it's great, but so the current journey that I'm on is something that I would do regardless, something that I would do. I mean, even if I never achieved the end goal, I'm loving every day of life. And that was a big realization. Process setting versus goal setting, ultimately.
I like that question from Ben. That is a strong question, because let me just, because I know you a bit, Emil, right? And if I was to, from an outsider's perspective, look at you and go, right, this guy has achieved multiples of success in different arenas. What's he got? Well, you've probably got, like, it sounds to me, and like, knowing you've got a lot of self-awareness, right? There's, like, I can tell you've got a high level of emotional intelligence, right? Your physical health, we can see you in tip top condition. And also, because I follow you on Instagram, I see what you eat, and you're eating good food. Like, your mental health looks to me as though it's at a high level. Right, so there are clues here, right? So maybe it's like, I think that's probably a nice subject that we can go through now, is like, what are the clues, and actually probably leads us really well into the how to win at masculinity, because like winning at masculinity is also like, it's kind of, it coincides with successes of life.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we can go tactical with this. So, this kind of winning at things boils down to winning at life, right? We're winning at things, money, having a six pack, whatever else, because we want to get a feeling. And that feeling, let's call that winning at life, fulfillment, self-actualization, whatever words you want to use, doesn't matter. Happiness, contentment. And so what I try to do now is look back and see, okay, if I was to systematize the achievement of this feeling of self-actualization, of whatever, how would I approach it? And the first thing I would do is optimize my health. I would put health as the number one priority. And the reason for this is, first, it compounds, right? It compounds in a positive and a negative way. So if you give it 40 years before you start, it's already been compounding negatively, right? So, the best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time to start is now. And then what health also does is it increases your capacity to perform, right? So if I can do 5 units of action per day, but I've optimized my health, my sleep, my exercise, my diet, now I can do 15 units of action per day. And that, if I can achieve that by 20, that's going to multiply through the rest of my life, versus if I wait until I'm 50. It's like operating with flat tires. And so very early on, I got lucky, right? I was very prioritizing with health, and that's now carried me through. And then the second action is starting to look at freedom, right? So you've got health, and freedom is made up of wealth, time, and the ability to kind of move around. And this is important because it stops you being distracted. If you don't have money, you're stressed and distracted about money. You can't work on emotional intelligence. You can't attain higher things. You're like, shit, I need to pay the bills. If you don't have time, it's the same, right? You work 12 hours a day, and then you go home and watch Netflix to recover. And then on the weekends, you have a drink because you're like, I'm fucking tired. And then you don't have any time to do anything else. And so creating wealth, freedom of time is important. And then from there, once you've removed these distractions, then you can start to think about, what I call leveling up, which is emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, working on your mindset, all these kind of higher things which allow you to navigate the world, which then allow you to attain this feeling that we're looking for. So yeah, I mean, I got lucky with the health thing, and then I fell into the freedom thing with money and business. But all of these things are also traps, right? You see people who get obsessed about health, who spend 80% of their waking bandwidth chasing a six-pack, obsessing over macros and calories. And same with money. I mean, one of the top regrets of the dying is I work too much. right? It's like every penny that you die with is not just, say, 100 grand that you've wasted. It's also the time you spent in your 20s earning that 100 grand that you've wasted. And so people chase money just to die on a pile of it. And it's like, missing the wood for the tree. So these things are traps as well. So it's all about balance throughout, right? Health, it's balance. You need to get it, put it on autopilot. Wealth, it's a balance. It's about freedom of time as well as money. And then you can start to do the higher things. I think I went off on a tangent, but that's how I kind of think about it at a high level.
No, I like that. I like that. That analogy of the 5 units a day, 15 units a day. And even if it's 3 versus 5 or whatever, the fact you put it as compounding, and that difference over a week is maybe 10 units between 3 and 5, but over 50 weeks, 100 weeks, 3 years, and then you turn around like you said at the start, and it's an overnight success. And it's like, well, no, the difference between someone who's healthy and fit and who's not is astronomical. And I remember sat with a client who came to buy fitness, and I said to him, "How much do you think your health is costing you?" And he's like, "That's not really costing me anything." And we dug into it a little bit, and he was going home at 3:00 every day. And he worked in an industry where most of the sales would have been made between 4 and 5 and 6 because people finishing work and going buying holidays. Anyway, I said, "Tell you what, let's do a little experiment. We'll get you energetic, so you're healthy and energetic at 3:00 in the afternoon. You've got loads of energy. Let's see what happens in the business." He brought in £250,000 in turnover that year. So that £100 a month gym membership turned into 250 grand, but people don't see that, do they? They just don't see that at all. Here's a question for you, Emil. So, you've got a real difference in the way that you train, and going off a little bit of a tangent, but you do strength training, you do strongman, you do like Olympic lifting, but you also do, like, I was following you on your reels, you do a lot of yoga, right? And there's a question from one guy looking to do more yoga to another. Sister, what has been the difference between incorporating yoga into your life? Because I think for me as a guy now, I tore my right hamstring, my left hamstring super tight, and it starts to affect me in all sorts of areas of my life. Being stiff and tight, it really gets me down. Stiff in all the wrong places. Yeah. So it's like, and I just haven't managed to create a decent yoga practice. And so what did bringing that into your life do for you as a man?
Yeah. So the way I define health is the ability to live life to the fullest without being impeded by my physical or mental health, right? So health is, yes, the absence of disease and all of this, but it's also the ability to function at a higher level. And I had a long history with sport. I grew up in Wales. So I did rugby from, 11 until 23, something like that. Multiple concussions, multiple pulled hamstrings, moved over to strongman, ate myself to obesity. Honestly, I was like 320 pounds, 142 kilos, something like that. I think it's 20 stone. Maybe more than that, maybe 20. I can't even remember. Maybe 22 stone. And then this was my mid 20s. I was getting out of breath, walking up hills, had high blood pressure. So I was like, shit, if I want to keep squatting and training when I'm 70, I need to sort this out now. So I got deeply into nutrition, lost most of the weight, got into bodybuilding at that point. And with bodybuilding, I kind of took the nutrition stuff to the extreme, learned about bodybuilding style training, and then did that for a couple of years, and then finished in maybe 2017, 18, and then started focusing on life, right? I was around 30 years old, and I was like, okay, I love training, and how am I going to keep this level of functioning up my whole life? And this is where bodybuilding came in, because you control all the variables, right? It's not like tennis where you can twist a knee or an ankle, or rugby where someone can stamp on your head, right? It's bodybuilding, and the only way to get injured lifting weights is ego lifting, honestly, or not warming up, right? And so I was like, okay, well, I can now control this, and I'm not going to get injured anymore, because this ends people's health careers, right? And then I was doing that for a number of years, And I was like, okay, well, what can I add to this? And I always had this image of yoga as being something that my mum did. And, she would come home from a session and be like, oh, I did exercise today. And I was like, well, you didn't. It was just yoga. And then that was basically it. And so I was stretching in the gym, and I'm sure most guys can relate. You kind of do 10 minutes and you're like bored and you don't really know what you're doing and your hamstrings hurt and you're like, ugh, this is crap. And then I got invited to a fitness retreat, a health retreat in Peru, literally last March. And it was a friend who organized it. And I wanted to support him. He was like, hey, I'm doing this retreat. And I was like, awesome, I'm in. And he's like, do you want to know the details? I was like, no, I don't really care. I'm just here to support you. And we did it. And it was a yoga retreat. And it was a couple who ran it. And they were hardcore. And that was the first time that I saw that yoga was a thing, right? Like this guy was doing all this stuff that I was just like, okay, well, I can't do that. I can't do anywhere near that. This is extreme. And I just remember this one time we were meditating. And you know how meditation and yoga are considered very like, chill and friendly and just do whatever you want. Well, he was like, right, we're going to meditate. I'm not going to start the clock. And basically don't move. You may want to move, don't. Your leg may go dead. It's not going to fall off. Don't move, right? You're meditating. And I was like, oh, this is legit. This is real. This is, hardcore. And I'm not suggesting go to extremes, but to me, rugby culture and all of this, I was like, oh, this is actually hardcore. And so from then on, it was March 2022. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do yoga. I got back to Lisbon. I found a local studio, booked into classes, did it honestly between 4 or 5 times a week. And the rest is history. And so the best advice is, again, this growth mindset is if you want to do something, don't worry about what the goal is, right? The goal is irrelevant. Oh, I want to touch my toes. I want to do a handstand. It's irrelevant. It's about figuring out how you can do the thing as much as possible for as long as possible. And so the goal can help with a general direction. I want to like longevity, pain-free, all this stuff. But I was focusing entirely on how can I fit more yoga sessions in? How can I enjoy the yoga sessions? And that meant that I did a shitload of yoga. And that meant that I'm now pain-free. I'm now very flexible. I'm now getting all these benefits. And I can't see me stopping yoga at any point now. I'm hooked. I'm addicted. It's awesome.
Yeah, because I think a lot of guys see something like yoga, and like this is something we're going to go into now about defining masculinity is something we talk about a lot on the podcast. Is that kind of exercise modality is feminine? It's wishy-washy. It's not worth doing. But actually, what you said there is that if you can remove any likelihood that you're going to pull your back, you tell you what, you'd give anything when you pull your back or tear a hamstring or to not have that pain. And I think so many guys are I think it's the yin, which is like the go. I think that's yin and yang is the slow. That might be one
Other way around, but yeah.
Yeah, are they? Okay, right. So, but like loads of guys are go, go, go. And one of the things that we were going to talk about, is like testosterone and so many guys, they train so hard, they push themselves so hard. But one thing they don't know how to do is optimize recovery. And I think that, like, looking at you're a totally natural bodybuilder. I think like Emil is ripped. I was like, looked at him, I was like, is he on the gear? But you do, don't you, Pete? Like you look at these guys on Instagram. The first thing you do with if you're a normal guy, if you've been in the gym, you try and work out, is he on enhancement or not? And I think a lot of guys who are as lean as you and as muscular as you, you've obviously got the balance right between optimizing testosterone and making sure that you're training hard, eating right, and resting right. So, it's worth checking out Emil's Instagram just to see that, because that is when you get it right, isn't it? Like that is when you get it right. That's the sort of shape you get in. To be fair, Pete's the same. Pete's in great shape. Pete's got great balance between trains really hard, trains really consistently, but he also walks miles in the woods every day on his own with Thor. Yeah,
it's me and the dog.
But I like, let's segue into the next conversation, because I think that is a big part of being an optimal masculine man, is being able to get a grip on those things, is pushing hard, resting, and optimal. As we said, Pete walking in the woods on his own, but that's solitude, like going out and being on your own and being comfortable in your own company. So the question we posed before was, if masculinity was a game, how would you win it, Emil?
So with all of these things in life, I call them the mini games of life, right? So you play a game like a video game, and then there's like mini games within it. And you can play them and you win little prizes, and they can maybe help the bigger game. And so winning the mini game of health is great because it helps you win the better game. It upgrades your avatar, right? And winning the game of wealth, resource allocation, collection means that you have more shit that you can do. But if you get obsessed with any of these mini games, you ultimately lose, right? You've missed the wood for the trees. You've lost the bigger game. And so masculinity is exactly the same as that. It's a mini game. And some people get obsessed with this mini game and they take it to extremes. So let's step back and say, what is the bigger game? And the bigger game is to live in peace and alignment with your true self and to enjoy life and the experiences that it has to offer, right? Something like that. And different people have slightly different definitions, but alignment and enjoyment are relatively universal. And so when I approach things like masculinity, instead of looking at a societal template or definition of masculinity as something to conform to, and honestly something that I might fall short if I try to measure up against, how about I just look within and see what is here? And then let's work on myself. Let's optimize that. Let's get therapy. Let's do courses. Let's do workshops. Let's journal daily. Let's meditate. Let's reflect and be the best person I can be. And that will be some masculine traits. That will be honestly some feminine traits, asking for help, expressing emotions. These are healthy traits, right? That everyone should aspire to. And then whatever I end up as is my version of healthy masculinity, a combination of my biology, the natural testosterone in my body, yes, societal conditioning, but me trying to be as true to myself as possible. And so that's what I would call winning at masculinity versus using it as this square hole that you have to kind of try and fit into because society says so, which then leads to things like fragile masculinity and people overcompensating and living in anxiety because they're not manly, right? Which is sad.
That's really good. I love that. That's really good, man. That's like a really concrete answer because I think what you said about just looking within, a lot of guys are looking out. How do I show up like a man? We talked about it in a podcast we did. It's like, what does it mean to be a man? And you see on Instagram, and you see, I'm a guy, like I said before. I'm going through Instagram, come across Emil's profile. Oh well, it's all about having big muscles. And I mean, me and Pete talked about this when we were doing the programming for the blueprint we've created for men. And Pete's definition was like, he said put lots of lat raises and some bicep curls in there, Ben. It's because for shape. And I was like, yeah, actually, because that is, for shape and looking good, that's the way to get there. Whereas actually, my current journey is into like cardiovascular fitness and like testing my body with endurance. And it's interesting because this, like if a guy is often looking for, I want to look manly now, they'd be like, oh, I'm going to go get some muscles. I need to get lean. And it's interesting that you said that because it's about defining what you want it to be. And I think, I love that. Did you want to share anything on that, Pete?
No, I like it too. Yeah, I think it's ultimately it's you creating the best version of yourself for yourself. So
Exactly.
it's creating that man. Listen, I had a little bit off subject, but it's not. I had a guy message me yesterday about a girl. It's like, Pete, do you mind if I ask you your opinion? It's like, crack on, mate. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm going through divorce, right? So my my advice on relationships might not be the best, but do ask away. And he said, like, I was supposed to go out on a date with this girl, and she like cancelled last minute. And she did the same last week, and I saw that she was out with all of her friends getting drunk at a party, and I just said, listen, like if she's doing that now, she's not interested in you, because if she's interested in you, she will see you, right? Also, if she's doing that now, it's probably a telltale sign of what she might be like in a relationship. And he was like, so I just dropped bomb. And he's like, oh shit, okay, what should I do? And I'm like, what you should do is not focus on her. It's just only focus on you. Just create the best man possible. Just create you, right? And then you're going to attract the amazing women because you have created the best man fucking possible, right? Whatever that looks like for you, if that's your health and your wealth and your relationships and your spirituality, just go out and create that, and you'll attract the women.
100% agree.
Yeah, you said there in the like just before coming on here to talk. I mean, you said you put something on Facebook, and you said you got a bit of a blowback from it. I'll be interested. Like, what did you ask, and what were the comments? Because the interesting thing here, guys, listening in, is that people don't talk about this subject a lot. But as soon as you do, it's very polarizing. And I bet for you, maybe, Emil, because maybe something you don't openly talk about a lot, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, I'm going to go and talk about being a great man on a podcast. And you've put something up, and then instantly you've had some sort of, well, you've had some feedback. So what was the post and what was the feedback?
So for context, my latest project is a newsletter, right? I love writing. That is what I realized was my purpose, ikigai, right? And one of the things that I'm doing as part of that is writing every day. Actually, you guys know Dan Meredith, right?
Yeah, he's our buddy.
Yeah. He's mentoring me, and he said you should publish content every day. So I was like, okay, cool. I don't want to do social media, so I'll write an article. And masculinity, it came up, and I had this podcast, so I was like, oh, let me formulate some thoughts on masculinity. And in the nature of the internet, I called it masculinity is bullshit. Here's why. And basically my argument was exactly what I explained to you guys, was don't worry about what society defines as masculinity. It has a long history of various different things. It's a nebulous concept that, you're trying to shoot a target which is kind of moving. You're never going to win. Instead, shoot for the best self that you can be. And so when I say masculinity is bullshit, what I meant was the label, right? The label potentially isn't serving us. And I don't know that most people read the article, right? So they just piled in and started commenting and things. And you know what? After a few messages back and forth, we were all largely on the same page, right? Some people like traditional gender roles. Amazing. Be my guest. Just do it with intention. Some people like to, express themselves in different ways. Amazing. Be my guest. The key is to do it with intentionality. And so that's what it kicked off, was just this knee-jerk reaction from people, as you say. They just had strong feelings pent up and wanted to pile in. And so, yeah, that was most of my day yesterday.
That's it. But what I can, like, an observation is you're very grounded in your masculinity, because you've got that ability to say, yeah, well, that doesn't make sense to me. That like a guy that is grounded and masculine can make that kind of appraisal. He's not searching, like, teach me how to. Because like, one of the things that happened to me when I went to have therapy. And I was speaking to the therapist. He asked a load of questions, and it was like, were you brought up by your mum or your dad? I was like, oh, my mum. And then 2 or 3 sessions in, it was like, well, Ben, one of the things that you're struggling with is you're going through this world saying, teach me how to be a man, teach me how to be a man, because I didn't have a lot of contact with my dad relative to my mum, so I was brought up by my mum. And I think that like, just going back to, did you have a lot of contact with your dad as through your upbringing? Like, is that something that you had a good, solid father figure in your life? Because going back to the question behind the success, did you have a great father?
Yeah, my parents were great. They had their flaws, right, and their fears and beliefs and whatever else, but I honestly think they did the best that they could in providing and supporting and everything. So yeah, really, I did. Both parents.
Yeah, because like both Pete and I we're interviewing a guy who wrote like a book on menswear tomorrow, and we both read through it, and like one of the big things was like the strong father role in successful men. Like, if you look at successful men in masculinity, from a masculinity lens, they had a great father in some kind of way. And I think that's what I'm starting to learn, is like, I look at my buddy, we've talked about him on the podcast, my buddy Lee, super successful guy, fucking really well fathered as well. And I think that's something that is you've got great work ethic, you've got a great ability to discern between where you want to go. You seem very decisive, and they're all traits of a guy who's got a very, very strong father figure. So interesting. No, just kind of like reading through it myself and going through it and seeing how you showed up today. So
that's a great insight, and thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, I definitely had that, and I suppose the next part to that is, people having these strong male masculine figures is important in life. Where can they get that from? Is it this nebulous definition of masculinity? Is it the manosphere kind of side of the world? Is it what you guys are doing, where you've kind of created your, I mean, it's your definition of being a good human, and there's a chunk of that is masculinity, but it's a template of how to win at life, right? Same as I have one as well, and ideally, people will find what you guys have, and there'll be this chunk of masculinity in it, and it will be a good example, rather than something a little bit more, toxic or wayward.
Yeah, because like even in the medical world, like I was speaking to an old client. So we had a Waken woman and we had a Waken man when we first started, just trying to calibrate with which market was a good market. And both me and Pete, and you seem most really passionate about the men's work, so we really just kind of ran with that. But she was a GP, and she said that there is an inordinate amount of men in the medical profession who are freaking struggling like crazy. Like, and you alluded to this in what you were saying before. What do you think about that profession is so damaging for men? Because it seems from the outside it's stressful, busy. Can you really talk about things not going well?
Yeah.
But is that what it seems?
Yeah, interestingly, what I was gonna say next was both rugby and medicine have very masculine cultures. I mean, toxic masculine cultures, right? And rugby is the standard lad banter stuff, and that's not really acceptable in the normal world. And same with medicine. There's still this kind of old boys club, kind of lad culture, and that means that people struggle because they just man up, right? They just keep everything clamped down. They just crack on, and then they they commit suicide, right? There's a huge number of people in anesthetics in particular who commit suicide. And so, that's the negative side of this kind of overly masculine culture. And there's nothing wrong with positive, healthy masculinity. And I suppose the point that I'm kind of trying to make throughout all this process is it the masculinity that's the healthy part, or is it just being a healthy human and exhibiting positive traits of the masculine? Yes. The feminine? Yes. And the neutral and all the others in between. Just finding the best ones and kind of building your own template. But the point you made about having a role model is great. I didn't consider that.
Yeah, because it is interesting. It's interesting that you've navigated to probably the most toxic. I don't like that term, but like hyper masculine or whatever you want to call it, like very male dominant arenas, and you've still managed to come out with a very, very balanced opinion and view of your mental health as well. Because like I remember speaking to one of the guys who was in World Rugby, and he quit World Rugby because of the fact that World Rugby don't look after the mental well-being of the players, and that was a big thing. Is like men aren't looking after men's mental health because it's just like something men don't do. So interesting that you've come out with such a real rounded perspective on it. So yeah.
What I would just say to that is, for my whole life, I wore a mask, and it was heavy on my soul, right? I was doing what other people wanted me to do, all for the wrong reasons, all to appear a certain way. And you know what? I was fucking great at it, which is why I won in all these arenas. What I later realized was those aren't the arenas I wanted to win in. I was doing it for the wrong reasons, and the weight on my soul wasn't worth it. And then so in 2021, I kind of had an awakening, whatever you want to call it. And that's when the threads started to unravel. So you say, well-rounded, all this stuff, mental health. that's been a recent thing, unpicking a lifetime of masculine conditioning, hypermasculinity, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the right words, right? But whatever it is, to become rounded and balanced and whatever else.
God, I think he's a brother from another mother on the same page as me and Pete here. I think all three of us have been through the same freaking journey. That's so funny. Yeah, because I was let Pete share his story in a second, but I was the guy, the trainer guy, happy face, happy smile, and like bouncy round, and like on the inside, I was struggling, and I didn't show it. I was a positive guy, so almost like toxically positive to everything, and that's what I had to really overcome when I got hit 30. Pete, what was your mask?
Oh, I had loads of masks, just like Emil, and I was fucking good at wearing them as well. Pete, Pete's the leader. He's running the business. Don't worry, give it all to Pete. He's controlling the show. Not a problem. Pete will fucking look after that. Inside, I'm like resenting all of it. Stop giving me all this shit to look after. I was just being the nice guy with no boundaries. Couldn't say no, right? But at the time, it's just a mask until it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Right, and then you start taking these masks off and go, hang on a minute, I don't really need to adhere to all of this. What's important to me?
Yeah,
it's the large part of the work we do, Emil, is actually like looking at like a lot of guys. I think, how old are you now?
36.
Yeah, so 36, like 30. I think a lot of guys get to that 30. And was it same for you? Like 30 years old, we successful because we've worn the mask, but then there's this, like, I love how you said that. But was it have
Weight
a
on my
heavy weight
soul.
on yeah, it's just like I was like, oh my gosh, that spoke to me. And you get to like 30 and you're like, oh holy shit, there's something not right here. And I think crossing the threshold of 30 for a lot of guys, there's a lot of struggle. If you're listening to the podcast, guys, if you're nodding your head and you're agreeing with this is, I think it's common. I think, Pete and I have had this conversation before. Obviously for you, Emil, you're successful. There's some resent going on. There's anger. You're not sure. It's like, something needs to shift. And as you said before, it's because you've been wearing this mask. And just a couple of questions. What was the one thing that you did that helped you start to remove the mask?
Yeah, it's just that straw that broke the camel's back is the accumulation of all the straws before it, right? And so there was a lot of stuff, and it started when I left medicine, because I started questioning work and why I was doing what I was doing, and then I started traveling and I started questioning why I even lived in any country, because I happened to be born there or lived there or whatever. And then so I started questioning more and more things, and the saying is, you question everything apart from the things you truly believe in. And just over time, through reading books, through therapy, through various other methods of kind of interrupting patterns, I started to dislodge the mask. And as soon as there was a slight gap, I could kind of feel that there was a bit of an edge, right? And I was like, oh, what's this? And then it just slowly from there started peeling it off. And it wasn't like in 2021, it wasn't like overnight the mask is off. It was just like, oh, there's a mask there, interesting. And then, okay, what does this mean? And what does this mean about how I carry myself? What does this mean about how I'm doing anything? And so the rest of that story is actually that I built a coaching business that was hugely successful after medicine. And I first was operating out of fear. I never wanted to go back to being a doctor, and that was driving me, dark energy. And then I got to a point where I was never going to go back to being a doctor, because I'd accumulated so much cash and my business was purring. And then I lost all my motivation. Everything disappeared. And I realized that this wasn't alignment. This was just something that was convenient, that was driving me forward. And now I hated it and I burnt out. And then I actually closed that business down 12 months ago, just over 12 months ago. It was running well. I had a team underneath me, and I was like, nope, this isn't it. And it's not worth that weight on my soul. And so I was questioning, what is money about? What is the point in money? What is the point in anything? And now it's in what is masculinity, right? What are we striving towards? Like, why do we do anything that we do? And so that's kind of where it all came from. 2021 was almost the point where I almost felt that first gap, but it was I don't know, 6 years, maybe 2014 was when I first had the spark that took me to 2021. And then since 2021, it's been like a rocket.
So here's like an observation. If the other guys listening haven't spotted this yet, is that Emil is very self-aware and like extremely self-aware, and to be self-aware, it takes work, but it also takes you have to stop and think and question. So it's not like just living day to day, week to week, month to month, just going by what society is telling you, or your boss is telling you, or your parents are telling you. It's actually questioning things for yourself and go, hang on a minute, does that make sense to me? And does that align with me and my values? And what are my values? And what is important to me? And actually really like getting into the granular there and getting into detail there, and not just like letting life slide you by. Like I can see Emil has questioned the fuck out of that for a long time, and because he's done so, and it's difficult work, has come up with some answers. But the second thing is that loads and loads of action. Like I noticed that even with the yoga thing, you were like, I got back from the yoga retreat and booked into 5 or 6 sessions. That's like excessive. That's like I'm thinking, fucking hell, I need to up my game on the boxing. I've actually just booked 3 sessions a week boxing, but I'm thinking maybe I should actually go 4, 5 because I want to get good at boxing. Why am I doing it 3 when I could do more? Because I could fit it in. Because they're only 30-minute sessions, right? I could get more in.
That's all you need.
Yeah. It is all you need. When you do, I've done boxing before. It's all you need. You don't need long. But it's that accumulation. It's that combo of like questioning and everything, taking time to think, right? Really, really taking time to think and self-analyze, and then not like sat there for months and months, years and years in your thinking. It's fucking like taking the action right now, massive action. I'm gonna go out and do all this shit and see if it works.
Yeah. Emil, gonna wrap things up and thank you for being on the podcast. This has been a great interview. It's great meeting and interviewing a conscious man like yourself. Where can guys find you, follow you? I think the links will be put in the show notes as well. But where do you like to be? If someone wants to, what's the word for it? Stalk you after listening to this. Where can they go?
Yeah, so Instagram is easy. Dr. Emil, DREMIL official, and also Ultra Winning on Twitter, and that's my new project.
Oh, brilliant! And we'll take a photo now as well, and we'll put it on our stories and get guys to easy access if you want to. Yeah, little pose. Thank you. Yeah,
Are
guys,
you taking a photo, Ben, or am I?
You go for it, Pete.
Oh fuck
yeah. This is for those of you listening in. We're wrapping things up. Yeah, and this is it's been an absolute pleasure. But having these kind of conversations, more and more guys.
There we go.
We got it.
3 guys who don't know how to pose. Yeah, if you've enjoyed if you've enjoyed the interview, please go into the show and rate it and review us. Follow Emil, stalk him. You know, he's got some great pictures. You ladies out there, and you guys as well, like me and Pete, like to check out great bodies and give a guy a high five when he's done the work. But other than that, thank you so much for being here today, my man. And thank you as well, Pete.
Cheers, guys.
Thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.